Good afternoon, and welcome to a very special edition of Day 4 with the man Frank SCALISH. Frank, it's been 34 days, I believe, since I was at the house in Shawnee, Oklahoma. So much so that I purchased a T-shirt that says Shawnee, Oklahoma.
Is that to remind
But
you?
heck, I had a great road trip. It did include a live Day 4 from your house, from your studio. So that's kind of cool. You've been in studio now at the BTL studio, and I've been in studio at your place. I was surprised. I thought that you had like it's very cool how you have it set up. It's not how I had it pictured in my mind.
No, I had to figure out a way to make it look bigger than it was.
It does. It looks very good. But I was at a media event for the last 3 days. It got over with. We got off the water yesterday at 5:30 p.m. Ran back to the hotel, threw my suitcase in, and said, "Dude, I think we could make it back for an afternoon edition of BTL." And then you are headed to the lake, correct?
I am not headed to the lake.
Oh, plans changed?
Yeah, I'm recording in studio. I went out yesterday, and shout out to Mr. Welch over there.
Yeah, we're just saying we got some guys that are back on live and just throwing up. All right, so what changed between were you not planning on being on the water today?
No, I was planning on doing a studio piece today. I hit the water yesterday. I went to a place I haven't been in quite a while. Actually, I went smallmouth fishing.
Ooh.
Yeah, and don't go ooh, because it wasn't as ooh as I had hoped.
It wasn't good?
It was horrible. It was horrible.
No. Did you boat any smallmouth?
Yes, very few. Only one big one. The rest tiny. And when I say tiny, I mean like tiny, like barely 12 inches. Which is going to be a kind of a spin-off on today's show. Because well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
Yeah.
We'll get to it.
Because I don't know what today's show's about.
I don't either.
I got back, loaded up the show, and then that was 30 minutes ago. Went and got some Panda Express, the 3 entree plate. You got to go half and half chow mein and fried rice.
Oh,
and
money!
Here we are.
That's a money bowl right there. Yeah, no, I spent the whole day writing a video. I'm doing a deep dive video on Norman DD22s, and literally spent the whole day doing that, and nothing really prepared for day 4. So I don't have any like exciting illustrations today. So today will be literally about some experiences I had yesterday on the water.
Okay.
And it'll be fun. It'll be good. But the cool thing is the Norman Fat Boys are out in all the new colors. Thank God, because we ran out of them a long time ago, and I couldn't wait to get them back because I was actually running low on a couple of them. And Tropical Shad is actually a bring back. That color was not offered in them prior. So I'm glad to see that back because that's a really good stained water color, especially up north where I live, which is weird because it works in clean water too, which I don't get, but it does. It's just a good color.
Really cool. When I was there, you actually gave me a custom painted Norman Fat Boy that will be in the studio in the backdrop for the foreseeable future.
Sweet. Did I give you a foil sided?
No, you gave me the red ear.
Oh no, I gave you the pumpkin seed.
Pumpkin seed, that's it. It's got a little bit more green in it. Yeah,
it was the pumpkin seed.
Was that ones that you're just kind of messing around to see if something hits to where you might then send it in for a color?
Yeah, that it was actually sent in. You have one of my one-offs. You have my original paint job.
Yeah, that's gonna go
on that.
That's gonna go right up there.
Yeah, so I've been spending more time painting, unfortunately, than fishing. I have tons of new colors coming out. Yeah, Justin, this is the Norman show. I have, I will be at this Bassmaster Classic. I found out today. I
Oh,
will be there.
that's my neck of the woods.
Yeah. So you better be there with me, Matt.
I got 3 more shots to try to be in it and not at it.
Well, I hope you're in it and not
I
at
know,
it.
so do I.
But if you're at it, you must come and join me. I have a special surprise.
Yeah, we'll have a bunch of stuff going on with the classic in Oklahoma this upcoming year. So
It'll be great. It'll be great. I hope you're fishing in it, and then I can handle it on my own. Although it wouldn't be nice to have a compadre down there. So anyway, yeah. So the new Norman colors are out. We have a ton of, well, I won't say a ton. Whatever we have left of Great Lakes Finesse is now on LureNet.
Did that thing just go like hotcakes?
Dude, it's on fire. This is special. This is special. This is what I went out yesterday to experiment with, because I have never, in all honesty, I have never used it. I've never have gotten it. It became available. I bought a ton of it online, and I bought most of it from LureNet. What I couldn't find on LureNet, I bought elsewhere. And so I was really excited to try and fish this stuff. So yesterday, I had a phone call from a friend of mine, and he was coming in town late, and so he wanted to know if we could fish. And I said, yeah, we'll go. I'm going to go anyway. I was planning on going anyway. And so we had gone out, and since he was coming in later in the day, I had to pick somewhere close to me, and I decided to go smallmouth fishing in the Central Basin area, which is not as prolific as out east and out west, where you have all the big giant flats and you've got a lot of terrain. So when you fish the Central Basin, you're looking for needles in the haystack, glacial deposits.
There it is.
The name glacier deposit. And stuff like that. So I was excited because I got my GLF stuff in, and I was actually really surprised when I got it, how small it really is.
It is tiny. If you're looking at what I was just showing up there, which was the drop minnow, you're expecting it to look to me something like the size of like 3.5, 4 inches. They are crappie sized.
Yeah, so this is my Great Lakes.
I mean, they're not crappie sized. They're in between. They're finesse. They're finesse baits. That's, I guess,
100%. So here's my setup. And so I was very surprised. When I got it, I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised, actually. And so I set my stuff up. I got everything organized, and I went out and fish this stuff. Now, the smallmouth day was not very successful. We caught some. My buddy Mitch caught one about 4 pounds, which was the biggest one that we landed. I lost one good fish. Yeah, I lost one good one, but I never got a good look at it, so I don't know how big he really was. We caught perch, we caught walleye, we caught 300 pounds of sheephead, or drum, as they're called across the world. And it was a shorter day than I wanted, but I learned something very valuable. When you're smallmouth fishing, I say this every time we talk about smallmouth, especially Great Lakes smallmouth. You have to know the depth range they're in, because they will not occupy. The main population won't be in all different depth ranges. You could find a few on shallow stuff, a few pods of fish on shallow stuff, but if you're not in the proper depth range, you will not come in contact with numbers of fish. So yesterday what happened was I had some waypoints that I had of some near shore structure that I found a couple of years ago. And they ranged anywhere from 15 feet to 28 feet deep. So I was running all that stuff because I already had it and we didn't have time to idle around for hours looking. So I just ran the stuff I had. One of the places produced the 4-pounder, which was actually an isolated glacier deposit. Had a couple of big boulders in the mix. And then for the most part, everything else was fairly barren. So with a short amount of time left in the day, I made a ditch effort and I jumped out to about 42 feet. And
that's really deep, isn't it?
yeah, it's pretty deep. I mean, they'll get out in the central basin, they get out much deeper. They'll get in the 60-foot range.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't have time to look for stuff out there because I don't fish out there because you kill most of those fish you catch. So I wasn't fishing for 100 grand. So I get them when they're in range, not to hurt them basically.
Right.
But anyway, I had one place that I had found a couple years ago in the 42-foot range. It topped out at 38, but it was 42 all around the boulder pile. And it was flat loaded with fish. Unfortunately, it was walleye and drum and white bass mostly. So we put the hurt bag on all those non-edibles. But
they're fun though. When I was out with Michael Simonton, it was probably 3-1 drum. But I'll tell you what, they give you. I mean, they test your equipment for the first couple runs.
Yeah. So here's what I learned yesterday. I'll grab my trusty smallmouth stick here. This little Great Lakes Finesse drop minnow. I rigged this thing. This is on a 1/8 ounce ball head. It's actually their stealth ball head.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many drum this caught. I don't know how many perch or white bass this thing caught. Okay. But I put it through the ringer. This bait never came off this jig head and I did not glue it on. I did not glue this thing on. It never came off the jig head. And the only time I had to change it was when I changed color, not because it was destroyed. The thing that amazed me about these baits is the durability factor in them. I never lost one on a drop shot. This bait is so durable, and when you look at it, it looks delicate and fragile, and it's not. This thing, like I said, the only time I change it is to change a color. I did not lose them to jumping fish. The sheephead didn't destroy them. The white bass didn't destroy them. I was unbelievably surprised at this. And when I first got them, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to need 1,000 of each of these because you're going to go through 1 million of them. And that was not the case. So that was a very pleasant surprise to me because I'm tackle heavy in my bass boat anyway, and I didn't want to become more tackle heavy. So that was a very pleasant surprise. The other thing was how realistic these things look in the water. That was another thing that really amazed me because when you look at them, they're dull. They're a matte finished bait. They're dull, but the minute that thing gets in the water, it looks lifelike. So I was really pleasantly surprised about that. And now I'm going to go where I know where the smallmouth are to fish for them. I'm not going to waste time anymore doing this game I play with myself.
It seems like it's been 3 months ago, but it was just like 3 weeks ago. iCast. We did one live show from iCast, but I mentioned it a little bit when I was in studio with you, doing an in-studio show at Uncle Frank's house, which, by the way, some of the best walleye I've ever had.
Dude, those were good. That was a good get on your part.
Met the Great Lakes Finesse guys, the owner the guy who worked with it. Obviously, a lot of these baits, Travis Manson from Smallmouth Crush, guide at Thousand Islands, also has input from good buddy of mine. You know Travis well, but there are plans in the works within the next 2 months during smallie season still to have the guys from Great Lakes Finesse, which was recently acquired by, I guess, was that called a parent company?
Yeah, I don't know what you'd call it.
But they're under the Lure Net umbrella now.
Correct. Correct, which is fabulous.
But we're going to have the Great Lakes Finesse guys on and talk about it because, he was talking about all sorts of things about neutral buoyancy and horizontal and why they're the size that they are and why. And it looks just like, oh, let's just make a small minnow style bait, but there's a lot of nuances to it.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, they got a color. It's called Spicy Melon, which is this right here. The spicy melon color. It's like a watermelon, but it's not a true watermelon color.
Mm-hmm.
This thing looks just like an emerald shiner in the water.
Really?
I was absolutely beside myself when I dropped it overboard. I was very surprised by this because it doesn't, for whatever the characteristics are, the way this thing reflects the color of the Great Lakes is unbelievable, but it looked just like an emerald shiner. So that was really, I was really excited about that. Now I want to talk about one other thing, because this is like a winner for me. Their Mini Pro tube head, which Matt, thank you for this one, because they're not we don't have them.
Borrow one there.
Right. This thing is a freak show.
Travis hooked me up with a pack.
Yeah, the way this thing is designed, you see how it's teardrop shaped and it's kind of flattish.
Mm-hmm.
The way this thing is designed, it sits like that on the bottom. So it kind of stands up. Well, we do a thing we called scooting, where you snap your rod tip and you scoot the thing along the bottom. This thing is absolutely deadly for that. And the reality of it is, the hook in it is it's a stout hook. It's a nice stout hook, but it's not super fat, so you get really good hook penetration on the bass. And the thing I like about this is how that head design rolls down. You're not taking up the gap in the hook, which is very good.
Explain this scooting to me.
Okay, so basically what you do is you'll throw the tube out there, it hits the bottom. As soon as it hits the bottom, you're not stroking it. I'll stroke a 3/4 ounce tube a lot, where it slams in the bottom and I snap it straight up in the air and it slams in the bottom, straight up in the air, slams in the bottom. This is more horizontal on the bottom. So you reel up and you scoot it along, you reel up, scoot it along. You're all doing everything parallel to the water. You're not doing a lift and drop technique. It's all parallel. Well, this hook doesn't want to roll over on you like a round tube head will roll over sideways on you. And when you go to scoot it, sometimes it snags in the side of a rock or something, where this bait slides up and over everything. The way this jig head is designed. And that, to me, is absolutely twisted good, because I can spin it. I could fish it on a spinning rod. I don't have to throw it on a bait caster, because when I'm stroking a tube, I'll throw it on my 7.5-foot bait caster. And so I can snap it up, drop it down, just like we used to do on structure fishing on Kentucky Lake, where we would stroke big football jigs.
I got
pop them up and slam them down the ledge. So I'm really used to fishing that way with the bait caster. But this gives me the ability to scoot with the spinning rod and never lose my contact with the bait, which is what I really love to do. Actually, it's a winter technique that I do with a Sparky head. A Sparky head style jig head. I fish that in the winter a lot. So I can use a spine craw or a woolly bug on it, where this gives you the ability to do a tube the same way, and it doesn't roll over, which is money, because you lose a million tube heads trying to do that with a round tube head. So that's very exciting for me. This is very exciting for me.
I know. I could tell you're like a kid to candy store or a kid on Christmas right now going over all this new stuff. One of the things I noticed that I wanted to get to before we moved on, if you hold that drop minnow up again, you'll notice it is all the rage now are these straight-tailed plastic baits, just baits that have a tapered end on them, that the neutral buoyancy. I know Jacob Wheeler's won some tournaments on it. We've seen a lot of that. I guess the generic but also brand name term would be Demiki rigging for it.
Well, that's the jig head. Ouch, my cat just clawed me. That's the jig head style. Yeah.
Hold Bam up. I haven't seen Bam in a minute.
Come here, babe. Well, she's pissed now because I hit her in the face by accident. Come on.
Oh, Bama has run of the house. I did notice that when I hit Bama, we'd be in the basement looking at custom colors, and then we'd be on the third floor, and Bama would be in both places at once somehow.
Yeah, it's very stealthy.
But okay, back to the lure there. What is so deadly, not just on that bait, but on that style of bait in general, on a straight tail like that, and not a forked tail or a twister, something with action, because it really seems like it would have no action.
Well, but it does. Look, I'm holding it as still as I can possibly hold it. And you see that tail moving?
Yep.
I'm literally holding it as still as I can. So the neutral buoyancy on this bait also is fabulous, because it literally keeps it like this in the water. It doesn't want to fall down like that. It stays just like this. It's very lifelike. The way what I like is how they have that little extra meaty ball at the end of this tail.
Yep.
This thing moves so good in the water. It was surprising to me because I never fished this before. So it was very surprising to me how everything on this bait was thought out. It wasn't just, hey, let's make a bait like everyone's drop shot bait, because this is not like everyone's drop shot bait.
It's way stiffer than I thought it would be.
It is, but it's durable. Like I literally put it on their jig head, which is right here.
Yeah, that was my next question. Can you use any ball jig head? Or I know that they have the smallmouth guys. Have you been like this? Are you incredibly detail oriented when it comes to your smallmouth game, as far as the powder coating and the dull, like the matte finishes and stuff?
Yeah. So to me, like, they make matte green pumpkin, which is what I'm holding up here. That's a matte green pumpkin head. This is, I believe, the 1/8 or 1/16. It's the 1/16. This is the 1/16. I have the 1/8. The 1/8 is the one I was fishing here. I'll get the 1/8 and show you the difference in the head size. So the one on the brown one is the 1/8, and the olive one is the 1/16. So here's what I was so pleasantly surprised about. So I literally glue all of my, whenever I have the Demiki going, or the jig head, ball head, jig head, whatever you want to call it, I literally always put a drop of super glue on there and then thread my soft plastic up the hook, so it never comes off. Well, I didn't do that with the drop minnow. I just put it on the jig head, and this jig head, however they got the keeper system on here, this thing did not come off. It did not slide down the hook. It did not come off. It did not budge. And some of the drum we were catching too were like 9-pounders, and they had this thing crunched in their a drum's back of his throat has crunchers because they eat a lot of mussels. And some of these things were buried in them crushers, and it did not come down. So I was really surprised. This system here is so well thought out that I have to really get involved in this because this intrigues me more than anything new that's come out in a long time.
All right. I know we have a lot of day 4 listeners who have gone through this, and you're actually going through it. So you're used to, heck, I was showing you some baits from an undisclosed location that were over 30 years old, still on the rack the other day.
Oh my gosh. I know. Dude,
Anyway,
I know you're going to cause me to make a 3-day road trip.
Anyway, long story short, you know the brands and how the baits fish and everything.
Yeah.
There's not much new, but this is a new brand for you, a new lineup. So when you're learning a new lineup, how do you go about it without breaking the bank or buying too many or stuff? Like, how do you, if you're going to learn a new lineup of baits, how do you suggest guys go about it?
That's a perfect question because you could waste a lot of money. So the thing that I did with Great Lakes Finesse, which is what I do with everything new I'm trying to do, is I don't go crazy and buy 50 bags of everything. I started out, I got all their colors and I bought 4 bags of each color. Okay. Because you don't know, the color game is a crazy game, and Matt, especially with smallmouth, if they got an affinity for a color, if you're not throwing it, you're not catching it.
Yeah, you show up with all the good-looking goby colors and stuff, and then they're like, "Oh, they're on something with purple and black flake in it. You got to have it." And then you go to every tackle store in the area, and it's sold out of that one color.
Correct. So I buy 4 bags of each color in each design that I want to experiment with.
Okay.
Then I look at how the creator, in this case it would be, I guess, Dan from Great Lakes, intended this stuff to be fished. And I watched some of his videos. I watched the tournament results from it. I wanted to see how he was applying it to the point of, like, he makes a sneaky underspin, okay, which I'm a fan of the underspin anyway. But his sneaky underspin is different for a couple of reasons. So I needed to find out why his was different and what was the purpose behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So I researched that. I came to find out that his sneaky underspin, while it works as a traditional underspin will in open water, okay, but we all know, because underspins have been around for a while, so we all know how to apply that. There's a million different ways to fish it. Not a million, but a handful of different ways to fish it for open water presentations. And my first experience with underspins was for spotted bass, because it's a very awesome technique, especially back in the day fishing under 2D sonar. I can drag the underspin underneath my trolling motor sonar and I can get the suspended spots that way. So that's pretty much how I fish the underspin. Well, I actually talked to Dan because I wanted to find out, there were some differences on his, and I'll tell you what they are. The angled arm, and if you look where the line tie is, it's right on the tip of the snoot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This bait fishes in the grass. A lot of your northern smallmouth fisheries will have deeper vegetation in them. And so on some of those inland smallmouth factories like Semco, et cetera, you're fishing this in and around the grass. And this thing comes through it because of the way it's designed to come through it. And so knowing that now, okay, I have other applications for this bait other than the smallmouth game. And so I research everything. So then the other thing that I went into is, okay, what are you fishing this stuff on? Meaning what rod lengths, what
Mhm.
line sizes, what are you fishing
Because
it
you don't
on?
want to overpower it. It's new bait, so you want to
Correct.
make sure when you're trying a new lineup, you're maximizing the bait's performance and not dampering
Correct.
it with too big a line, too heavy a rod, or vice versa.
Right. Exactly. So they're long rodding them. They're throwing 7.4s and 7.5 foot spinning rods, which is no problem because that's what I use anyway. So I didn't have to really re-gear for the rod game. Um, I did re-gear on some of my line size and my reel size. Um, yeah, dude, trout, fantastic. I got a buddy of mine that was catching lake trout on the things, so they're pretty versatile baits actually. So I realized that my aggressive nature of fishing, I had to downsize my reel, and the reason being was because the Powell rods that I'm using are so lightweight anyway. When I put a heavy reel on them, the rod wants to automatically rise tip up, which is how I want to fish the spinning rod. I don't want to fight a spinning rod to be able to hold the tip up. I want the tip to automatically
Mhm.
rise for me. So I used a little bigger than normal size spinning reel. And back in the day, I used to only use fluorocarbon on them. And so the wider spool would eliminate a lot of line twist and a lot of kink. So now that I'm on a all braid main line, I could downsize my reels. So on the Daiwas, I went to the 2500 because it's much smaller, and the Powell's light enough rod. You can see it still wants to ride tip up on me even with the smaller reel, but now I don't have to worry about line twist with the smaller spool size because of the braid. So the only thing now I'm doing is I'm changing, and I'm using the Sunline braid, which I like a lot. What was the Sunline you gave me the other day, Matt?
FX1, the high
Yeah,
vis stuff.
FX1. No, still using green. You still
Okay.
got to get me off of the high vis crap, but
Did I
I'm
give you
using.
some low vis FX1?
Yeah, you gave me low vis FX1 and a 600-yard spool, but there was like 190 yards on it. So
Oh
thank,
no, I'm
thanks
sorry.
for
I
that.
didn't know that.
That's okay.
I
That's
didn't.
all
I
right.
thought I gave you a fresh spool. Were
Now
you able to get one of them at least spooled up with
I
it?
got I got two reels spooled up
Oh,
out of
I
it.
feel bad now.
No, don't feel bad, but I like the performance of it a
You
lot.
had been
But I said,
using, or you still use the X Plasma Saw guy.
yeah, I still have my other rods are spooled up with the plasma, but I know why you go to the high vis now, because this line here you can't see it.
No,
You
it
can't you
disappeared.
can't freaking see it, and we had such a heavy current, which is another thing in the Central Basin. I'm going to give you guys a quick mini lesson here. The Eastern Basin and the Western Basin has a lot of current. In fact, it has an enormous amount of current because of two reasons. On the Western Basin, you've got the rivers dumping into a narrow section of the lake. And on the Eastern Basin, you've got the whole lake dumping into a river system, and it's very narrow. You could literally, in the Eastern Basin, you can literally be fishing the United States shoreline and see Canada's shoreline. It's very, and next down, and the current is monumental. Okay. Which affects the weight of everything you're going to throw. You always have to go heavier in those currents, especially if you're fishing under your sonar, because you got to keep the bait in the cone. And if the current's too strong and you're not with a heavy enough, drop shot sinker or jig head or tube head, if you're vertical, it's going out of your cone, so you
Mhm.
can't see it. And with forward facing, at least my active target, the cone and the active target is very narrow. So it's very easy to lose your bait because it's not in that cone. So if you have a light weight, you're always floating out of your cone and you can't see where the bait is. So, but the other day in the Central Basin, I was shocked because I've never seen the current there that strong, where I was literally dropping down under my locator with a 3/8 ounce, and it was drifting off of my cone. And I was stationary, and it was drifting out of my cone. And so I've never experienced the current there that strong. So the only thing I could think of was the prevailing winds had really started pushing the current, or we had an opposite wind for a few days prior to me going out there. Then the wind shifted the way it was supposed to go with the current. So I had all that water that was stacked was now rushing out along with the wind pushing the current. So we had an exorbitant amount of current, which I've never seen it to that magnitude in the central part of the lake, which was really unique.
And will those fish set up, move to the front sides of the current when they're feeding, tuck behind the back when they're new, just like they're river fish?
100% like river fish. And then the other thing is when the current goes slack or gets slow, like here, if we had an opposite wind pushing the opposite way of the current, it would literally stall most of the current. There's still current, but it stalls it. It makes it slower. And then when that happens, the fish start to suspend around the cover they're on. If they're on a rock pile, they'll suspend around the rock pile, which actually, to me, is, I don't mind seeing that, because then I'll crankbait them. That's one of my favorite ways to crank them. But
that makes sense,
because then I could run it right above the top of them, and they come up and smoke it. But it was really weird. It was a really interesting experience. Now, the only thing this episode today is proving is that I'm not fishing near enough, because if I was on the water a lot, I would have already known these things about that area.
Well, that's not, I mean, does that area change as much? I had Chad Pipkins on BTL 2 nights ago, and he was on Bassmaster Live the first day out of St. Clair, and he obviously made the run to Erie. He was one of two boats who made the run to Erie over. I'm not sure if he was on Pelee Island or around that, but that area that they're all famous for, that's famous for out there when you go over there. Yeah. And he said that it was, it had changed an incredible amount in like 12 hours.
Yeah.
Since the last time he had been out there, because of the current and the flow. And he said those fish were still there, and he lost like 24 pounds in like 15 minutes. And that was the only flurry he had. Said they weren't biting it. They were doing something weird. So it changed rapidly, which was shocking to me how quickly such a massive body of water can change.
Well, here, let's put that in perspective. Lake Erie replenishes its entire water supply every 3 years. So
really?
if you think about the massive body of water that is, for it to literally replenish its entire water supply in 3 years, that's a lot of flow.
Wait a second. Okay, so we regenerate like all of our cells in 7 years. So technically, you're a completely different person than you were 7 years ago. and if Lake Erie changes all of its water every 3 years, then if you go to Lake Erie every 7 years, you're a brand new person on a brand new body of water every single time.
Every time. It's like being reborn.
100% new, and the lake is 100% new.
That's absolutely correct.
But yeah, here's a wrench though. You could catch the same smallmouth. You
could, and he would be bigger.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a very interesting animal. Usually I fish way more than I have been the last several months, because I've been, like I said earlier, I've been making colors. You guys are going to be so surprised for quite a while after, in the next few years. There's going to be a lot of things happening. It's keeping me busy, which is good. Keeping me off the water, which I despise. So it's bittersweet. I love creating baits, but I love fishing too. So, but yeah, so it was very enlightening for me. But I am going to start spending time where most of the fish are at now. I'll leave the central basin for walleye and perch fishing, and I'll go catch smallmouth where they live in numbers. They're there. They're in the central basin, and there's giant ones there. I just don't have time to look for them. So I have to go with where I know, where all my experience is.
I'm trying to think of how we label this one for today. Is it like a
dazed and confused, new and exciting?
like a Great Lakes Finesse introduction, I guess, but you also had some really good Lake Erie juice mixed into this.
Yeah, I mean it's
smallmouth.
just,
It's kind of a smallmouth hodgepodge. How does that sound?
yeah, it is. I mean, it really was. It's thanks, Aaron. It's really interesting to me because the things that like it's like this. If I go punching somewhere, I know I'm going to catch them punching. I know what to look for. I go out and you could find them. But if you're looking at a lake and it's all punchable, the entire lake is punchable, it can be daunting if you're not 100%. Yeah, if it's not 100%. It is. If you're not 100% understanding where the best punchable water is, it could be daunting. The central basin of Lake Erie and some of the bigger, vaster, wide open Great Lakes are equally as daunting because it's like this. You know what to look for. You know exactly what to look for. Only you can't see it. You have to literally use your electronics and look for it. And that's a time-consuming animal. So if you've got one day to go fish, if you're going to go to a place like, for example, where I went yesterday, and you're going to go out there and experiment, I hit places that I already had in my GPS and that I knew because I didn't have time to go look because the Mitch, who I was fishing with, came in a little bit later in the morning and we had a short day. And so I just took with what I knew. I knew pretty quick we were in the wrong depth range because it wasn't working out. Mm-hmm. The problem was we stuffed a 4-pounder on the second spot that I went to. What's that?
Is that called a red herring or a false albacore? What's that called? Dude, is it called a false albacore or a red herring?
It would be a false.
Or it's like leads you down the wrong, where you something happens, but then it leads you down the wrong path to misery and heartbreak.
It did, and it truly did. But I knew, even though we caught that fish, I figured if I hit enough of my structure in that depth range, we would catch 5 or 6 good ones to really have a good limit. But by the third stop, I knew we were in the wrong depth, and I must have said it 50 times. We're not on the fish. We're not near the fish. We're not even close to them. We have to go out. And the problem was I didn't have anything out. And so for Mitch, it would have been he'd have fallen asleep behind the in the passenger seat while I was idling around looking. And then when I found something, it would have been dark. So I just said, well, we're just going to stick this out and we'll catch whatever we catch, and that'll be the day. And, hooray for Hollywood. Tomorrow's another day. And so basically that's what yesterday encompassed. And then today, I spent all day prepping for a deep dive video, which is why
as soon as the show's over.
Yeah, which is why I don't have illustrations and stuff.
No, it's all good.
Go on.
It was kind of last minute. I called you last night. I was like, "Hey, man, I'm driving all night. I'm driving through the night, and I should get home around 11." And you're like, "Yeah, I could switch things around and go live."
Right. So I said, "Well, let's make it later in the day then." And then, because why kill yourself? You know what I mean?
Yep. In honor of being back, though, in our normal setup, which feels fantastic, you want to take a couple questions?
Yeah, let's do it. I need questions.
Right. Yeah, if you have a question or two for Uncle Frank, especially if it's smallmouth related, that'd be nice, or largemouth. Who cares?
Any
question about life, relationship advice, financial advice, anything. Just it's open lines for Uncle Frank right now.
Oh boy. Okay. let's not
Big
get
Water
personal.
Bassin says, does Uncle Frank have any advice for largemouth up in the Detroit River?
Yeah, those bass there are going to be predicated on vegetation, and current will play because they're always going to be by a current edge. The current's going to drive the bait fish to those areas, not because the current pushes them, because that's when people say the wind pushes them and the current pushes them, that makes me so mad. They go there because a lot of the bait fish feed on plankton and current brings the food to them. So the bait fish will set up on current breaks and eat the food that washes by them.
So it's a
That
circle of life thing we got going on.
correct. And the current makes things
Food
very
chain.
predictable, and grass points and stuff like that on current breaks is money. It's absolute money.
They have a different state, but I'm sure it's the same species of fish. What should I be throwing on Mille Lacs, Frank? I'm going there Sunday for my first time.
Well, I mean, if you're obviously going to be smallmouth fishing on there, your traditional smallmouth baits totally work fine. You don't have to change much of it up. You just got to figure out the makeup of the lake, figure out if grass is going to play or not going to play. I know Mille Lacs is pretty vast, so your normal smallmouth stuff will.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with a tube and a drop shot.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to beat that, man. And I wouldn't ignore topwater this time of year because
blasted them on Mille Lacs on topwater before.
Yeah, but shallower lakes could have a really good.
Have I told you about my Mille Lacs topwater story, Frank?
No, but I do need to hear it.
I was fishing with Gene Gilliland, fisheries head of conservation for BASS now, but the elites were having their deal up there, and we stayed after. I think it was after. It was after. I think, were they even up there? They might have been in a different body of water. And anyway, he had a boat and I had a couple rods, and we went out, and the only topwater we could get him to eat was a Rapala skitter pop of all things. He had a couple in his box, like I didn't, with the sucker round mouth.
Yeah, I know exactly what that bait
But
looks
here's
like.
the craziest thing. You could sit there, and if you worked it like a popper, you would never get a bite. You would swear there wasn't a bass there. And if you cast that thing out and just gave it the most delicate little pull, and just so a couple ripples came off of the bait would then go under like a cork, like a bobber crappie fishing, and it'd be a 4.5 pound smallmouth every single time. They're literally coming up and trout slurping the feather treble off of the surface of the water. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, that is so money. That's exactly how I fish that crazy shad on smallmouth. They can't handle it. They just can't.
You fish it real slow and just barely hit it.
Yeah, I just make a little bubble trail, and then I leave it there, and I just twitch it, and all of a sudden it's like, boom. And most of the time, if it just disappears, it's a big one. It'll be a big one.
All right, let's do a little bit of rapid fire. Frank, do you believe bass school by size?
I could tell you this, on the Great Lakes, all of the Great Lakes, they absolutely school by size. Some of the inland lakes, I've caught 1.5-pounders, and then on the next cast caught a 4-pounder, smallmouth. So I would say Great Lakes, absolutely. If you're on Great Lakes and you're catching small fish, you're catching small fish. You may get lucky and catch a big one.
Good topwater to use around wood. Ian Alexander would like to know.
All right, so I'm going to take 3 parts to this question. If it's shallow buckbrush on off-colored water, I'm going buzzbait or horny toad style bait. If you're fishing grass and the water's semi-clear, if the grass is below the surface, I'm always on a Super Spook Junior to start. If the grass is at the surface, I'll go hollow body frogs, pop-our style baits for where it dissipates a little bit. And open water, I'm throwing a Super Spook. probably the one knocker because I like the noise it makes. It's noisy. You know, if I'm calling them up from deep open water.
But around wood, are you going with either a buzzbait that you're bouncing off the piece
Yeah,
of wood
yeah.
or a popper?
I got carried away. Yeah,
that's fine. I mean, that was good stuff. But he's probably sitting there going, man, he's probably got one stump that he's trying to figure out what he needs to blast it with.
Yeah,
first thing in the morning.
throw around wood. I'll throw, like I said, buzzbaits if it's real shallow, buck brushy, dirty water. I'll throw my Super Spook Junior around standing timber. I do that a lot. I throw the Crazy Shad around standing timber a lot. And you really can't go wrong with a popper style bait, because if you're throwing a bait like you know, the P71 or the bigger popper, it'll walk a dog like a spook. So you could work it in multiple different cadences, and it's going to be all about the cadence that the fish wants. One really great topwater bait that I fish on Table Rock a lot is jointed redfin. I do a trick to the bill and make it wake. Wake baits around wood are astronomical, dude. They're astronomical.
Does it involve heating it and possibly bending it?
It totally involves heating it and bending it.
I used to have a lot of ones that ran really well, and then I tried to heat them and bend them. Now I have 0.
Yeah, it's a very tricky proposition. It's very tricky proposition. You ruin more than you get to run right, but when you get them to run right, they're dynamite.
Okay, Darren, I'm gonna ask this question to Uncle Frank. This is an entire show. This is an entire 2 shows. This is an entire career.
I have my
figure this out.
Yeah,
how to pick out an area to find isolated rock piles in Erie. Is there a way to answer this? Because you talked about the intimidation factor of those giant lakes. I've just spent a lot of time on them. You know, I was out on Erie for 3 days. I was on Ontario. I was on Thousand Islands, but I've just been on. I was just on Huron or Superior. I don't know, one of them. Anyway, so I've been on 3 of the Great Lakes in the past 2 weeks, and they are intimidating as hell.
Yeah.
But if you either have a lot of time to spend out there or you're with someone who knows where they're going, they make it look incredibly easy. Is there a way in a minute to basically say, hey, you may not find the juice, but you're going to be in the ballpark if you look for these things on the Great Lakes?
The fastest and easiest way is to go where the known reefs are and get off from there. That's the fastest and the easiest way. But
how do you know where the known reefs are?
Well, they're on every map. And so
the chip.
Yeah, they are on every mapping chip. They're on every topo map. But understand this, those are not private. There's a lot of people that fish those because they are readily available. The sneakier stuff, you have to pay attention to the most minute differences in the contour lines that you find on a map. And then you have to go from there. It could be something so insignificant, but something different than the contour lines that are around there. And then I'll start looking over there. Now, also, you have to understand that a lot of the maps, as you get offshore on the lake, and the structural elements are not going to come in contact with barges. The mapping companies don't pay attention to that. So they kind of dismiss a lot of it. So a lot of it is just trial and error and covering water. And that's really a lot of it. I mean, it's time.
But I will say, I mean, you could go 3 hours and feel like you are completely losing your mind, spinning your wheels, and have no idea what you're doing. And then all of a sudden, a boulder, a little rock vein, a high spot shows up, and you make your whole day off of it. And it could be anywhere from a single boulder, the size of the front deck of your boat, to a rock vein that runs 50 yards.
100%. That's exactly what it is. And it takes time. And you have to understand this. If you're in a section of the lake that's featureless, a small 1-foot feature could be a gold mine. Mm-hmm. If you're up at like Thousand Islands, or you're up at Lake Erie Islands, a 1 foot break isn't going to mean much because there's tons and tons of structural elements out there. So if you're in an area on whatever Great Lake it is, if it's flat, mundane, the littlest thing could become the biggest thing. If you're in an area where there's so much of it, the little things become meaningless.
Let's round it out with one more question that I think is a really good question. I don't think I've ever had anyone has asked you this. Chris asked Frank if you could only have one bait for Erie smallmouth, what would it be? Because I know you're very fond with about 4 or 5 different things out there, and they're drastically different.
They're all drastically different. Okay, so if I had to say one bait for Lake Erie,
yep,
I would say a tube.
Okay.
As easy and stupid as that is, it would be a tube. Good. Because here, look, I mean, honestly, if you had to, you could drop shot a tube.
Yeah, you can cut it in half.
You don't even have to. Just drop
shot the whole thing.
The whole tube.
And I don't know why that wouldn't work.
It does. We've done it. So, I mean, you know, I would say a tube. It's probably if I had one lure to pick, I would pick a tube. Although you see me crawling out of my skin with one lure choice.
I know, because you want to have a Carolina rig, and you want to be able to deep crank, and you want to be able to swim bait, and occasionally you want to be able to spinner bait, and then there are times you want to drop shot. There's times you want to throw a spoon. There's times you want to drag a jig. Now you've got the Great Lakes Finesse arsenal in your repertoire. So,
but I would say, to be honest with you, if you had one lure choice and only one lure choice, I would take a tube all day long.
Hey, what are you doing Thursday, August 10th at 8:30 a.m. Central Time, 9:30 Eastern?
I think we're doing a real live show, man.
We are back live next week and for the foreseeable future until I head to Watts Bar the second week of September. But we have an entire month of BTLs. A lot of cool stuff coming out on lurenet.com. Frank has been furiously working. It's really cool to see some of the stuff that you're going to be. Well, I don't actually know what you're coming out with because you're not like allowed to tell me. So you point me in the right direction and be like, some of these might seem really familiar in a couple months.
Oh yeah, you saw some of them. I did one the other day that I did one the other day, and I can't disclose it yet, but I will tell you this. It's by far one of my favorite things one of my favorite patterns I've painted in a while. It is twisted.
Clay, I will say this. Clay said, I just realized that you don't really hear Frank talk much about non-affiliated products. He's loyal. Dude, I dug through Frank's boat. Like, I mean, I knew it was probably painful for him, but I was saying, hey, do you have this? Do you have that? Do you? Because we were on a tough bite. We ended up catching about a dozen fish. But as I went through his boat, it is lure net stuff. Pradco, Booyah, Yum.
Yeah, for 90% for sure.
90% of the boat is exactly what you talk. I mean, it's not like you talk about the affiliated brands and then have Zoom trickworms in the boat or any of that. Like what you talk about, dude, that's what you have in your vessel.
Right. Now here, look, I have some non-affiliated stuff in my boat. I have Hopkins spoons. I have some Zoom soft plastics. I have some Strike King XDs. I got some KVD jerk baits. I have some Jackal jerk baits. Hell, I got jerk baits that Excalibur used to make that they don't even exist anymore, and I've got a box full of them. I do, but 90% of what I talk about, that if I talk about a brand affiliated bait, I actually fish them, and I have been fishing them forever. So
immaculate too. Like everything is just so like there's not a single kink in the plastic. Every trailer kicks perfectly. You're just it's good. It inspired me, Frank.
Well, don't, because this is a whole nother animal of life you don't want to go through, Matt. There's something beautiful about your state of disarray.
On that note, I think that's where we cut it off for the day, Uncle Frank. It was great to be back in studio doing our thing. I'm going to have to figure out what number this show is. I have absolutely no idea.
I don't even know either.
I'm going to go take a nap. Like I said, we were 3 minutes late. You had to call me and be like, dude, I had the show running and everything. I literally dozed off in a chair, not even like a recliner or a bed, like a kitchen chair with Panda Express in front of me. That's how bad it was. Like, so the last 18 hours, 1,300 miles, day 4, it's 103 degrees. My grass looks like the opening to the Jumanji remake in the movie out there. I keep waiting for like a python to crawl out of it. And I'm going to go fish the Thursday nighter on Shawnee Twin Lakes with Austin Cranford.
Excellent. Keep awake, my friend. Keep awake.
I don't know how I'm going to do it, but we'll figure it out. This kept me awake. This was interesting stuff, Frank. I appreciate a special time and place. Next Thursday, we will be back on August 10th with a regular show, a regular time and place show. Also, a full week of regularly scheduled BTL coming up this week on Monday. We will hear about Ben Milliken's foray up north on Thousand Islands, what could have been, what should have been, how he salvaged it, the whole 9 yards. Ben will be on. On Tuesday, Matt Steffen will be on to talk about his first MLF Invitational win that included an $80,000 check, punched his ticket to Redcrest, made the Bass Pro Tour, got stuck in a lock because of a barge that wasn't on any app, barely made it in with 2 minutes. Matt's wife is also going to be on because she was watching all this on the .com because they extended the live. So I want to have her on to see what she was going through. Yeah, because she had to have been freaking out. I mean, it was a $70,000 difference that they knew would come down to seconds.
Wow. That's good.
It's good stuff. And then Wednesday, still working on Wednesday show, but have some ideas for Wednesday. There's also a new fishing league that's coming down the pipeline this fall. It's pretty interesting stuff. I don't think you know. Yeah, this one has maybe a little bit. There's some cool dynamics to it, so that'll be in the week.
Now I'm intrigued. Anyway, now, see, now you got me.
I'll talk to you afterwards. I don't know how much I can tell you about it.
That's okay.
All right, this has been another edition of Day 4 with the man Frank SCALISH. Next week, 8 a.m. See ya.